All right, so here we have it. New York Mets just finished defeating the Atlanta Braves 8-4. They now have the first spot in the wild card. The comeback has been complete. They erased a 10-game deficit to get in front of the Braves. Now they have another 10-game deficit to overcome if they want to take over the Phillies. So they did it once. Could they do it twice in a season? We'll see. But a lot of good stuff happened today. And Mets also acquired Ryne Stanek from the Seattle Mariners. That's something that is going to be the focal point of today's episode. But first, we are going to talk a little bit about the game, Senga's return, also Senga's departure. So, been a while since it's been just me and Andrew on the Mets Weekly channel. Carson tried to be here, but he's been carrying the load. That one man show really kind of wore him out. So he's resting up. He's definitely here in spirit. I can still hear him in my ears, just kind of giving us directions as far as what we should be doing. So Andrew, what did you feel about today? Because today definitely was a mix of emotions, some good stuff, some stuff to get excited about, some stuff to be concerned about. But all in all, definitely a crazy day in Mets land.
I mean, just another day in paradise, right, guys? And this is kind of what we expect as Mets fans. Again, a early two like deficit, Duval homers, and we're like, okay, that kind of puts everybody in this. Well, saying this is kind of still spring training. We can already come up with the excuse. JD Martinez, who's been slumping, go in the opposite field, hitting the grand slam, and then that third inning of just everyone. Again, see what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you build a team that hits home runs. Because look how easy and quick that was. Grand slam, 2-run shot, solo shot, and you have 7 runs on the board. Yes, you had the rally for the grand slam, but the difference of this team that is hitting for power compared to the past teams that have been, one base outcome guys.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things is they talked about it on the broadcast on the pregame show that the Mets faced Charlie Morton earlier this year, and Morton had shut them down. When they faced him last time, but this is a very different Mets lineup than the one he faced. I mean, this team has been drastically different with Francisco Alvarez on both sides of the ball. Their offense has been improved, but also obviously the pitching has been the big impact. And then Mark Vientos, I mean, I keep saying it, but we saw him go up to the hot start, and every time I look at the stats and I say, okay, eventually he's going to regress. He's going to come back down to earth. And then even today, I was like, oh, OPS finally below 900. Here we go. Then all of a sudden he hits the home run. He has multiple hits in this game, and boom, he's right back above that 900 OPS. So, he's just been, again, one of the biggest stories for this team, just the incredible offensive season that he's had. So you add him into the mix. You have Francisco Lindor currently making an MVP case. Now you have a slumping JD Martinez playing better. Jeff McNeil has the highest OPS in the league in the second half of the season. Like, there's just so many different things going on with the Mets right now. And Atlanta has a ton of injuries right now, no question about it. But the Mets, they got some of their own issues too, with Bader being out and also not having Marte either. So it definitely has just kind of been interesting seeing the disbanding the team. Now I have a camera thing to work out, so what do we feel about Vientos and now the fact that it looks like Beatty is probably on the trade block now with just how well Mark's been playing?
You there? Oh, sorry, gentlemen. Just oh, gotta love technical difficulties. Gotta love it. So we're just.
All right,
Well,
so
guys, sorry about that, guys. Trying to figure out.
we got just not the greatest tech day today. All right, so now we're back. But yeah, I mean, basically just again seeing how well Vientos has been playing. That's definitely been a big story for me. He's just been a guy that we didn't really feel like was a factor, but he's been really solid. And now you've had Taylor. He's been out there for a few days. He didn't do much today. I mean, he was the one guy who was kind of left out, having a hitless game, batting ninth. But you got to think that Bader's hopefully back soon. Right now, they've talked about him being day to day after he had his little ankle issue trying to steal third. So we'll see when Bader gets back in the lineup. Marte, right now, he's slowly progressing, but still not quite back yet. So they still have to figure out what they're going to do. He hasn't begun running yet. And that's really what's going to come down to with a knee injury, something that is bone inflammation, trying to find out when he's going to be ready to go because they're going to need him to run if he's going to be playing the outfield. So that's something that's been interesting. And now the new storyline for the Mets is that they've been in talks with San Francisco as they are trying to reunite with old friend Michael Conforto to now be an outfielder for the Mets. And until Marte is back, he would be a starting outfielder because the DJ Stewart experiment flat out has not worked out for them right now. He's been a guy that, despite how many opportunities the Mets have given him, he's been below league average. He just hasn't been able to get it going. He hasn't been able to string anything together. We were hoping that maybe coming out of the All-Star break, he was looking a little better against the Marlins, but it just hasn't happened, and you saw it again yesterday going up against Chris Sale. He just can't do anything against a lefty. He pinch hits today, doesn't give you anything. So there still just hasn't been anything there. And while Conforto hasn't been great this season, he's been above league average, which even Tyrone Taylor has not. So, the Mets, they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. Like I said, currently down 2 outfielders. They're very fortunate that McNeil finally has got it going because that now allows them to, once Bader is back, if you want to keep McNeil in the outfield and Iglesias at second base, you could do that because Iglesias still is playing really well. Andrew, is your setup all good now? How are you feeling about, I guess, the outfield, Marte, Conforto, Taylor, Stewart, just kind of gamble? Like, how's that all going to shake out by the time Tuesday comes around?
All right, the mic sounds fine. Are we
Yeah.
good? Quality? Okay, we're good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, this headset has been a pain in the ass lately. But yeah, like we talked about, like me and Carson talked about on Thursday, the outfield is a need. And yes, obviously we would prefer a left-handed bat, and I know a lot of people saw that Conforto, report, and there was more positive than negative because again, I still think there's a lot of fans who still like Conforto, even though obviously it didn't end well. We all know Jesse Winker is the better option. We know this, but here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Rizzo's not making a trade with us unless you're giving up like a high quality prospect. He's not going to make a trade with the Mets unless he wins it. So it will be has to be an overpay, even for a rental that Jesse Winker would be. And compare him to the Giants, where Conforto, the Giants are going nowhere. There's no seem to be any hatred between the Giants and the Mets, so you don't have to pay that extra tax. And like I said, they have a few relievers who you could put in this, especially after some guys, a couple today, which we'll get to, continue after some good moments in the Bronx, got back to reality in this game. But again, there's a bundling opportunity to get one of their, quality high leverage arms. Pick a Rogers or, there's a few other guys in the rotation and bullpen that potentially you can bundle with a Michael Conforto, which again, I said this like as a joke. Alonso has his best friend. Lindor's, they've had acquired him or acquired one, almost acquired a second one of Lindor's friend. Can Brandon Nimmo get his best friend back just for and especially how this season is going with the fields? And again, I'd much rather Michael Conforto, and let's say you get Starling Marte back, I'd rather have Michael Conforto be my 4th outfielder than a DJ Stewart and giving Tyrone Taylor, pushing him down the depth chart. Yes, giving him still, the occasional AB, but again, like you said, you kind of need a guy now with Bader being nicked up. Again, we'll see what happens with Starling Marte. He's just the second coming of you want to assess better to this point. You just never know when this guy's going to play baseball. When you could say, he was doing better. He's still not running. Like he's hitting, cool. That's good to see. But again, we saw the defense is completely diminished, and his offense was still good. But again, you still and Conforto is not the great defender that he was in his prime. He's not anything close to what he is. And like I said yesterday, we don't need him to be the second coming. That top 10 pick like he was has to be the face of the franchise. All I need Michael Conforto to do is hit between Alvarez and Vientos in that 7th spot of the lineup and give me, like you said, league average quality ABs and league average production. That's all I need. Because if Starling Marte gets back and is productive, I can just shift him to the bench and have good outfield depth with Taylor and Conforto off the bench or a quick lefty power bat off the bench. That's kind of where this is. Again, and price to acquire is not going to be high. You saw Rhylan Thomas probably we'll get to the Stanek deal in a second. The outfield market, Randy even went for a subpar return than most expected for especially outing out term. So that kind of
Exactly.
set
Yep.
and that sets the outfield market. And like Aiden Smith's a pretty good prospect. Again, there's some other, I know Pipeline didn't like him, but the pitcher in the deal as well is pretty solid. So that sets the market. Conforto is not having, an 700. I think it's just at 700. I think it's like 707 OPS or something similar in that ballpark. The batting average, whatever, 10 homers. Like, that's maybe, throw a bottom half, maybe a 29th, 30th prospect, even if that. Maybe you get a couple of unranked, lottery ticket arms, and then that's it. Like, it's not going to cost much. And especially if you can bundle that with Taylor Rogers to give me that good high leverage second lefty or primary lefty and, letting Jake Deacon, be gone. There's a lot of benefits to this. I know there's a lot of people saying that they don't want the reunions because they never end up working, which is true. I've been very vocal about not wanting reunions with Aaron Loop that you and me fought over some guys bringing them back. And I get it, I do, but again, do it for Brandon. Let Brandon have something nice. He's been the one asking for them to buy. Bring his best friend back because we're all about the vibes right now this year. And again, he can be a productive bat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you as to the point where it's like I do want them to try some new things. I did want to see some fresh faces, some guys that could do a few different things. So, I'm not I'm not totally advocating pounding the desk to acquire Conforto, but I think they're just in a situation right now where, like you said, unfortunately, what they have right now with Marte down is just so bad that it's just a big upgrade by default, even if Conforto isn't having the greatest season. Right now he's barely above league average, and that's because, once again, he had a horrendous June. I mean, this is a thing that has plagued him his entire career. It happened with the Mets plenty of times, and it happened probably the worst ever this year. So now he's trying to kind of battle back. He was good before June, and he's been pretty good after June. So he's trying to be like Lindor and kind of turn it on and then get those numbers to be respectable by the time it's all said and done. So, at least we got June out of the way, so we're not going to get that again. But I just do wonder how it's going to go because he's coming into a different team than the one he was on, for sure. I mean, we haven't seen a Mets offense like this since, I mean, how long has it been? I mean, the 2015 team had a lot of power, but I mean, this is a team
this is similar to 06 compared to the 15 team. I would say this is more similar to that than that kind of second half. Cespedes is carrying that offense. This is a little more. You're getting 1 through 9 compared to back in 2015, where it was a couple of good guys and then the occasional Uribe, Johnson. Like, you're getting production 1 through 7 most nights, and if Jeff McNeil is better, you're starting to get 1 through 8, 1 through 9. And everybody in the lineup's giving you production. I think that's probably the closest it's got to be 06.
Yeah, I mean, no, they put up huge numbers, especially ever since they've made all the changes with Lindor moving to leadoff and all those things. So, he's going to come onto a team where there's still going to be pressure. I mean, if you have a team that, let's say, everyone is healthy and they are clicking, like if McNeil, like you said, if McNeil's playing well, now Conforto's in a situation where he kind of doesn't want to come in and mess it up, where it's like you don't want to be the one guy that's now standing out. So, listen, I've been critical of, sometimes him not coming through with runners on. He's going to have a lot of at-bats with runners on base, especially if they're hitting him like fifth, like the way we saw Jeff McNeil hit tonight, the way we've seen DJ Stewart hit far too often because he's left-handed. If they're going to put him in that 5 spot, he's going to come up in a lot of big opportunities, batting right behind Martinez and Alonso and right before Vientos and Alvarez. So it's going to be an interesting situation for him. And like you said with Marte, like even if Marte does come back, we just don't know how long it would even last, even if he did come back. I mean, it's just happened far too often where, he's here one day and then he, like you say, he's gone the next day. So I feel like you just have to be prepared for that, and I'm glad that the Mets are looking at that as something that does need to happen. They're not just saying, oh, well, he'll be back, so we don't need an outfielder. Like, they are being considerate of, okay, we probably are going to need another guy to play the outfield for us, preferably someone who is a left-handed hitter. So I'm glad that they are taking that into consideration. One of the things that's been interesting for Conforto this year is that he does have reverse splits this season, so he has been hitting better against lefties, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just think that the fact that he is a left-handed bat is something that is encouraging. I talked about it on the post game today, but the way JD Martinez has struggled with the outside corner with the sliders, and you see Vientos have some of those same struggles, and Alonso, he kind of swings at everything sometimes, but having a lefty to break those up and not let the pitcher get the rhythm of just hitting the same location over and over and just getting bailed out by going with the sliders away, having a guy that hits left-handed right in between that, where when you slightly miss against the left-handed hitter, you're right in their wheelhouse. So I think just kind of having pitchers need to change their approach. And, some managers really, really care about lefty-righty matchups. It really could change the way they look at it. You look at what the Braves did today. They had Ramon Laureano pinch hit for Jared Kelenic, and Laureano has been terrible this season. And I was kind of hoping that Kelenic would bat, because we were so close to an Edwin Diaz versus Jared Kelenic matchup with Diaz warming up in the bullpen. So that would have been fun to see. But some managers really do care about that. So just the fact that you have a guy's left-handed, maybe it causes more pitching changes and just different thought process as you're going on along. So the other really big thing that happened today is the Kodai Senga injury. He's coming back off of injury, and then he has a different injury. So I do think that it's just it's a tough situation. You got to feel for the guy, because it was so exciting to see him come back, to be throwing 98, to get 9 strikeouts. The fork ball was looking good. The ghost fork ball was looking very good. So, you're feeling very encouraged, and they have so much energy. They're hitting these home runs. The crowd is packed and electric. And then to see Senga all of a sudden cramping up, I don't know about you, I had a little bit of flashbacks to Edwin Diaz just all of a sudden laying down. You got something? Laying down on the ground.
We got, I guess, breaking news, but it's more of a breaking news for something that could be breaking soon. DFA Josh Walker, 1 minute ago. Continuing to open up 40-man roster spots.
Okay.
That's
all
why
right,
I bring it up. So
okay.
It's not now, but he's opening up 40-man roster spots.
Oh, boy. So it says he was removed to make room for Stanek. So
Okay, so that I need some point again. There you go. There's I just saw the Mets tweet first. Just said DFA Josh Walker. I'm like, okay.
No, because the interesting thing was as we were talking about Conforto, he's out of the lineup tonight for the Giants. So I feel like they definitely have been having the conversation. They've been having the dialogue. It's just a matter of kind of coming to agreement on the pieces going forward and coming back. So I feel like San Francisco is in the case where maybe they don't want to risk an injury before they're about to make a move. So, we'll see. Josh Walker is a guy that we've talked about on this show since its inception. Had some hopes for him, but it hasn't really worked out. And he survived a long time. We just seen a lot of guys get DFA'd, get removed from the 40-man roster before him. And he's another left-handed arm that, is just not here. We saw Joey Lucchesi. He was able to survive, though. And with Walker, I don't see anyone really clamoring to claim him. I feel like he's... if he's former Met, it's possible. But, we'll see kind of how that goes. But it's not something I'm really going to be losing sleep over. I haven't really seen much. They've tried him in the bullpen role. There hasn't been much there. But, so far as left-handers, they've been getting some good stuff out of Alex Young. So we'll see kind of how that continues to develop. And this was a team that went from having 1 lefties to having 3 lefties. And then, as far as Diekman, we've talked a lot about his potential option, the vesting option, where once he hits that certain amount of games and innings and things like that, he comes in today, he gives up the home run, he gives up the hit to Arcia. He almost walked Nacho Alvarez, a guy hitting under 200. So, he had the great game against the Yankees. I'm not going to take that away from him. So I kind of wonder if it's recency bias, where if he strings together a couple of outings, they'll be like, we'll let it keep playing out, and we won't try to do anything and just kind of pick up that vesting option. So I don't really know what's going to happen there, but it's just kind of interesting that Stanek, we can now transition over to him. This is a move that I like, that the Mets continue to go for these guys that we've heard of, guys that have playoff experience, that have pitched in the big moments, that have come from really good organizations. Stanek is a guy that we've definitely talked about on this very podcast in plenty of offseason previews. So he came from Seattle. So Andrew, what do you have on Stanek? because he's a guy that, a couple years ago, he was lights out for Houston. It hasn't happened this year. I know it's been a little bit of unlucky things going on, but how were you feeling about Stanek now being a New York Met finally?
Yeah, I mean, better late than never. Again, we talked so much. Again, Carson's been yelling at him, seems like, for 4 years now. And of course, he goes to Seattle, which, we've always made the joke at the pitching factory that they do have out there. And he wasn't awful. Like, again, the ERA is high, but again, like, he was, serviceable. Again, Seattle's pen, obviously setting up to Munoz like we would have the Diaz. He wasn't amazing, but again, it's more Stearns continues to go stuff over stats, which is great to see. And also, I find this funny again because I love little narrative balls. This guy's acquired two, of that Houston bullpen. He goes out and went on that World Series run. Got Phil Maton. Now he's bringing in Ryne Stanek. I just got a foot. He's just building that 2022 Astros World Series bullpen. Go get me Brian Abreu, and I'd be very happy. But again, it's as many guys that you can bring in to deepen this pen, push Adam Ottavino closer and closer to DFAing him. That's always great to see. Again, hard fastball, hard split, good mix. Again, the walks about 10%, which isn't, but it seems like, they're prefer this stuff and they'll be okay with the walks. Jeremy Hefner can fix them, guys. It's okay. He can develop pitching. But again, I really like this acquisition. Again, just continuing to add. I do think, and especially with the injury to Danel Nunez today, putting him on the IL, I'm not saying it's a blessing in disguise, but if he were to go down, maybe they only add one reliever. Where now with his injury, maybe there's going to be more than just. I would think would have been two, but to maybe add a third, maybe go get a third reliever, and then once he comes back, you could look at a really deep Mets bullpen. Obviously, you're going to get back Reed Garrett. Hopefully, him rested and not being absolutely killed. Sean Reed-Floyd, like Ethan said, you're getting those two guys back. I think you do still need that sexy, high leverage extra close. I still want that because just as a fan, you want that big move. But looking at a guy like a Fairbanks, people want Tanner Scott. I voiced my not interest in Tanner Scott, but I did bring up an idea because the Marlins' Max Meyer has been showing a lot of trade interest, and we got the Martino article about the Mets and Beatty being the main trade chip. So there's a bundle that could be made there potentially to get the reliever and a starting pitcher. Now with the Kodai Senga injury, so again putting this kind of fixing all of the problems and giving some more depth to this team. But Stanek's a really good arm. I prefer him in the 6 and 7, like that Ottavino role, because if you're fully healthy, I still think Diaz is 1, Nunez is 2. Budos deserve that kind of 7th inning or multi-inning guy. If Stanek's your third or fourth or fifth reliever in the pen, it's a pretty good pen. And unless again you add that other sexy or high leverage, closer type, this could be a really good bullpen. Again, Bryce Montes-de-Oca is still potentially an option hanging around there. So maybe even again we talk about that Brandon Sproat out of the pen opportunity. So there's still some guys internally that I would like to see the depth, but I do like that Stearns has been aggressive, adding major league arms. So we saw Eric Orsey today. No more of those, please. Just give me major league quality relievers. Ryne Stanek is an above average MLB reliever. So the fact that we can get Sean Reed-Foley back was really good this year. Reed Garrett, before he died, was really good this year. So you're starting to see a bullpen be built, and there's depth. And I do think there's still one or two acquisitions he's going to make. That if it is that Tanner Scott, Pete Fairbanks, Taylor Rogers, closer type, can really put this bullpen over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other big piece too really is what's going to happen tomorrow with Tyler McGill making the start. This is a massive start for McGill because, this is a big opportunity here before the All-Star break because you have the Christian Scott injury. Now you have the Senga injury again. So if you're now in a traditional 5-man rotation again, and McGill's going to be making a start every 5 days, if he does what he was doing early in the year with walking the batters, not able to work deep into games, the long ball and everything, then it's like, okay, well, now we need a starting pitcher as well. So, like you said, as far as kind of determining what they're going to do with the pitching all right, do we need to get now another reliever because of the injuries and get a starting pitcher, plus we're working on an outfielder. that's a pretty long list to be working on during the trade deadline. So I think that just kind of seeing what's going to happen there, if McGill could actually show us something to be a guy that we could count on to potentially be either in a 5-man rotation or a 6-man rotation, that's something that is going to be really important for him. So it's a big start for him tomorrow, coming back from just the minor leagues and kind of how that whole situation has been playing out. But, I feel like with Stanek, I love it. I love that now finally we have some guys that come in here and he could give you 100. And I've said that so many times where the Mets have called up so many guys that they just don't have much stuff. They just don't see, like, okay, what is there really to work with? How could you get quality production out of what this guy is giving you, what he could provide? And for Stanek, we've seen him do it in the big moments. I feel like that's going to be really big for this Mets team as they're going to be trying to get into a playoff environment, be in a playoff series. Having guys that have been there before in Phil Maton and Ryne Stanek, that's definitely a big deal. Reed Garrett doesn't really have that. Sean Reed Foley doesn't really have that. So, having some guys who have been there, done that, that's big. We've heard about, every year, Andrew Chafin, and the Mets are linked to him. Would he qualify as that other closer that you're looking for, as a guy who has closing experience? He is left-handed. He does have a mustache. Is that someone, that you really would be going for? You'd really be able to get another mullet in there. So would Chafin be that last piece that you're looking for to kind of complete the bullpen, or are you looking elsewhere?
If he's let's say elite good depth, if he's my depth option, Stanek's my good option, and I'm still I'm all for adding as many arms as possible. But the Chafin as a high leverage elite arm days are over. He's a left. He's not far from Jake Diekman level of he's lefty. He doesn't have the velocity anymore. He was really good a few years ago when it made more sense. If I'm getting him for cash consideration, sure. I'm getting him for a lottery ticket, 14-year-old in Florida complex league, sure. But again, he's not that premier high profile arm. If I'm getting him for a couple bags of sunflower seeds, sure. But again, that ship has sailed as Chafin being the sexy option anymore. This isn't 2019 anymore.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. This just knowing those guys that we've been talking about for so long, every single year. I just feel like that ship has sailed. I just, he's a guy that is going to continue to get worse. So I just don't think it's really the smartest investment. I would like to see them kind of go a little more high upside. You mentioned Fairbanks. I've always just absolutely loved him. What he's done in Tampa Bay, he's just been phenomenal. He's another guy who a lot of playoff experience, been there in the big moments. So I would love Pete Fairbanks. I feel like he would just be a fantastic addition. But the Mets have been in a tough spot with their bullpen. As in an ideal world, you would love to take Senga out after 5 innings in his first start back with a 6-run lead, but the Mets have not had an off day this whole second half of the season, and they do not have an off day until Thursday. So, this is a 4-game set with the Braves. They have another series after this, and they only got 5 innings out of Severino last night. And, Manaya and Quintana, they didn't really work deep in the Yankees series either. So right now they are working with a short bullpen as it is. So it would have been great if they could have pulled Senga after 5. That would have been the ideal scenario, but they didn't want to burn their bullpen when Senga's pitch count was also so low. He was at, I believe, 69 pitches after 5. So he was pitching at least 80 pitches in the minors, so he was getting close to the pitch count that I feel like they would have for him. So it was just a really unfortunate circumstance. And it's things that the Mets didn't have an off day today, or not today, but yesterday on a Thursday like they normally do. And sure, you could have took Senga out because you had a rested bullpen. You had the Nunez injury, so they've just had a lot of things. You had Budo work 3 innings yesterday, so they've just had a lot of things that it was just really bad timing. And, this conversation of potentially moving Budo to starting rotation, I personally don't want to. I just think he's been so good out of the bullpen. He's been a totally different pitcher. He's just been so huge, and I feel like he's really transformed the bullpen, in my opinion, because I feel like ever since they've put him there, we haven't been really having these conversations about, oh, bullpen blew it again. Oh, this is a game the Mets had in the bag. And now they haven't really had that lately ever since he's been here. And the fact that he was able to go 3 innings to this way prevented you from having to use some other guys that you don't want to, that's been huge. I feel like when I've said this, when the Mets have Nunez and Diaz available, the bullpen has been fine. So it's been those days when they aren't available, getting someone else to step up. Budo has been that guy to step up. He's gotten saves. He came in with runners on yesterday with the Braves. He had that big game against Colorado. So he's been just so phenomenal that I wouldn't do it. I would rather them add another starting pitcher and keep Budo in the bullpen than the other way around. Because as we know, with relievers, they're just so difficult. You know, even like a guy like Stanek, like I said, he was lights out not that long ago, and now he had some struggles this season. So when you trade for a reliever, there isn't always a guarantee that they're just going to come in and do the same thing that they were doing with the previous team. But if you have a guy in your organization and the bullpen already who's doing a great job as a reliever, I feel like you got to stick with the hot hand. Andrew, what's your stance on Budo? Starter, reliever, where do they end up with that?
Yeah, again, you've seen that he fits the role, and they said he enjoys coming out of the pen. You have comfortability, and yes, you have the need of needing to go get a starter. You need to go out externally. You have something going very well right now. I'm not screwing with it. Budo's been good in the bullpen. Call Chicago for Eric Fetty, Miami for Max. Like, go make a trade. Like, I'm not taking Jose Budo out of the rotation. I hinted at it on talked about it last show. Maybe by the end of again, if you can find a veteran potentially cheap and not Rich Hill, which I saw some people seeing that, I'm like, no. If we get past the deadline, I do think maybe a potential Blade Tidwell spot start could potentially be in this over Sproat because he's a little older and he's obviously we know AAA doesn't exist, but again, it's having those reps in AAA. I do think that's not out of the realm of possibility as a spot start in the middle of August, end of August, if need be. But I think Stearns, again, if we saw the report from Martino saying they're going to go for it, you have the Scott injury, now you have a Senga injury. If your goal is not adding a starting rotation piece or two after these injuries, then you're not going for it. You're just, let me pluck a reliever here and two. If you're actually going for it, you need to address that. If it's Eric Fetty, if it's that kind of lower 4 or 5 guy, I think if you bring in 1 or 2 of those guys, I think that could fit it before ruining a guy. Budo has had success in a spot, and especially with this Mets bullpen, it's hard to find guys. And you've had him and Nunez being the constants in that bullpen. I am not screwing with that. I would rather go out, use some of that prospect capital that you have built up, and if it's Eric Fetty, if it's a Max Meyer, if it's hell, even a guy like a Paul Blackburn, just somebody that can be a fifth or sixth starter, and maybe do not go back to the 6-man rotation if Senga's out long term. Do we have that conversation back up again if Senga were to miss long-term, time with this calf? So for me, I'd rather spend the prospect capital to go get an Eric Fetty than put Jose Budo back in the rotation because, we have it internally. No, for me, I think you need to go externally, bring in a starting arm, and leave the good thing alone. Just leave it alone. You got something good, don't mess with it. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm very curious about is just kind of what the reliever market is ultimately going to look like. I mean, getting Stanek for your number 30 prospect, I mean, that seems like a very nice deal. I mean, we've seen relievers get moved for a lot more. And, I'm not high on Brett Beatty right now, but I feel like going from the number 30 prospect for a bullpen arm compared to moving Brett Beatty for a bullpen arm, that seems like a pretty big disparity. Am I wrong there? I mean, what am I missing as far as talent and just what markets are going to look like? Because we saw Jamie Garcia go from Toronto, and again, like not a crazy package. The one trade that was crazy was the one the Royals made. That was the biggest package we've seen as far as with the Nationals and what they gave up to get a relief arm. So How's that kind of going as far as, who are you actually moving when we say, okay, we're going to move now that we've built up these prospects? Like, do you actually think they would be willing to part from in order to get these other upgrades, or even the rotation? I mean, like, how is that market look like? We saw Zach Eflin, he got moved today as well. So, there have been a lot of moves happening, and the Mets, like they made one today as well. So the trade deadline is not till Tuesday, but teams are being active, and I like it. Teams are trying to say, okay, we're not going to wait for the guys to get cheaper. This is a big series for the Mets. If they really want to kind of hang on to this wild card with a lot of teams in it and actually get these games on the Braves, I like that they are being aggressive now and not just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I said, and I did say this yesterday with the podcast about the Royals trade, because again, I said to the casual fan that goes on MLB Pipeline, they see Caden Wallace getting traded for Hunter Harvey, and you're looking, oh, it's a number 2 prospect. The Royals farm system is god awful. Like, it got better now with Jock, but overall wise, Caden Wallace in a average farm system is probably where 15 to 20 range. Like, he's not anything special. I know to a casual fan that isn't the most in-depth prospect, just goes to pipeline. Like everybody does. Oh, we traded a guy. Look for, we got a number 2 prospect again, but nobody takes into consideration the strengths of the farm system. The number 2 prospect for the Royals is different from the number 2 prospect for the Orioles or the Tigers or anyway. But you're seeing the prices. Jonathan Clase moved today for Yimi Garcia was the main piece. It's a piece for Seattle, because Seattle has a deeper farm. So it's, they can afford it without trading Celestine or Lazaro or any of their big, middle infield prospects. So they could afford to move up a class. Who was had some big league time. But really, and the Puck deal was interesting because again, that's kind of a
yeah, that's another big one. Arizona, they're a team that's chasing the Mets, so they get the good lefties. So yeah, it's a lot of teams, going for it.
And then that price was 14 on pipeline, which is similar to Baseball America. But then they saw the other pitch. The pitcher in the deal is 30 on pipeline, but it's 14 on Baseball America, 15. So it's like they have a 15 and a 14 according to Baseball America. So the prices, I do think Stanek's the cheap again because Rhylan Thomas, and I think Stanek has been the worst of the guys moved. I think maybe you could say him or Hunter Harvey are kind of interchangeable, but obviously I think Yimi Garcia is having a better year, and AJ Puck, who we've said on this channel for years, and has pitched really well lately, has the upside team control.
He has great stuff. I mean, and he's left-handed. Yeah. There's a lot to like. As long as he's not throwing wild pitches, he's definitely an intriguing arm. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's just a really good sign overall for the Mets that that their 10 or their 15 looks better than a lot of other organizations, which has not always been the case with how willy-nilly they've given up arms for rentals and things like that. So, I like that they have taken, more of a conservative approach with it. But this is a team that there's just a lot of uncertainty, in my opinion, as far as what the window is going to be. Obviously, the whole Alonso situation, JD Martinez, a lot of these, like we've said, a lot of these guys are here on short-term deals. So that's kind of where they're stuck as far as like, as far as like going for it. I mean, like we said, how much really is going for it? I mean, you finally have, like we said, best offense we've seen in decades. Are you going to try to actually capitalize that and then maybe move a prospect you normally wouldn't for whether it's a bullpen arm or other short-term piece? Would they now be willing to do that because of how well they've played? I mean, we talk so much about June, but right now they also got the best record in July too. So, they've just been playing really well these past couple of months, and we'll see if they capitalize on it and just again how far they're willing to go, because you could say you're going for it, but as we say, actions speak louder than words. And Stanek right now was a good start, but again, it's not like this huge game-breaking move.
Yeah, and again, we'll see. And I expect, and you saw Michael Marino saying the Mets potentially add 3 relievers. And we saw that tweet from Marino saying he could be one of 3 they add. So, and again, now with the injuries to the starting pitching, maybe does that change? But again, back to the question you said, the second half of the question of what do you have to trade? I've been kind of pivoting to Alex Ramirez being a tradable asset because of Drew Gilbert.
He's still on the 40-man, right?
He's still on the 40-man as well, but you would have Clifford, you've got Gilbert, you went out and got Carson Bench in the draft. So he's maybe a little bit, I'm not saying extra fat, but he's an option. Obviously, Mike Vassell and Dom Hamill, I've seen, some extra, he's no longer the top guys. I think Marco Vargas, in my opinion, would be a guy I would flip. I know they just acquired him last year at the deadline for David Robertson, but I would ship a Marco Vargas for those type of guys because, again, he's so young and he's not the type of guy that what you got. What
Would you trade Vargas for David Robertson? Could they pull something like that off? That'd be pretty interesting.
Hey, you want Luis Angel Acuna back for Nathan Eovaldi? I've been saying that. Put that in consideration. Have him back.
Well, no, apparently, Texas has been playing well right now, so they might end up. It looks like they're probably going for it as well after winning the World Series. So they could end up really going for it as well. So I don't know if he is still going to be available. We haven't seen. I'm just looking at the 40-man now because like the Mets are going to add people. Who that is still to be determined. But like new players are going to come into this organization. So on the flip side, more 40-man roster moves are going to happen. And when you look at it, I'm kind of curious to see, what does happen with Matt Gage because, they acquired him from the Dodgers. We haven't seen him yet. Ty Adcock is still on the 40-man, which, I find pretty fascinating.
Yeah, he'll probably be the first guy.
I would think he's the next man up on the chopping block after his disaster in Pittsburgh and his home run derby that he had. I would think he would be the next one to go because, that's the other thing, too, is that you also have these guys that are a lot of guys on the IL that are coming back. So it's like, once Sean Foley is back and then Garrett's back, you have a lot of decisions to make. You still have Grant Hartwig on here. We haven't seen him in quite a while. He's, been dealing with some injuries as well. So, there are some guys that there's like some things to be determined. But when you're looking at the position players, like you said, the only guys that really make sense would be Ramirez, and then you're looking at Gamble and DJ Stewart because everybody else is here to stay. I mean, obviously, Mauricio and Acuna, those guys aren't going anywhere. And Beatty would have to be in a trade. You're not just going to outright DFA him. Mm-hmm. So, they would be the next guys that would have to go after these pitchers are gone. And let's say you do make a trade for Conforto, I would think Alex Ramirez would have to be a corresponding move on the 40-man roster.
Or you could also play a DFA of Ben Gamble. You also have that in the back pocket as well. If you don't want to,
we haven't seen him in a while, and he's on the active roster. I mean, he's on the active 26 man.
So again, there's fat that can be trimmed. I think Danny Young can be DFA. So if we're just talking pitcher wise, again, Matt Gage is the interesting guy you brought up. Adcock's most likely gone for any type of reliever. So again, it's a lot of interesting discussions. Again, Sean Foley, like you said, coming off. Christian Scott, I mean, do you play? And
we don't know how long he's going to be out. Yeah,
and you can also look to play if this doesn't look well in 2 weeks to go putting him on the 60-day to move up and open up a roster spot. Alex Young has been pretty good. Danny Young, I would think, could be the next guy. One of the next guys for a pitcher. Logan Porter is there now. Sure, it's a catching depth, but again, those aren't questions for us to answer. That's for the guy that gets paid a lot of money to figure those out.
Yeah.
And again, there's some fat that can be trimmed, but there's also, again, could we see, obviously Beatty's on the table potentially on trade. Maybe at Acuna, because maybe, if they go bigger in a rotation, he could be on the table. So, again, I there's flexibility on the 40-man. There's not as much as I would like. But again, when you're playing, so many injuries and then you're grabbing waiver claims, it fills up fast. So, again, I'm not going to lose sleep. Again, I trust David Stearns to do what's best for the organization because he's earned that. So, if there's a surprise DFA that whoa, that's didn't see that coming, I'm not going to doubt he's earned that right. So, DFAing Alvarez, that's a good option. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, there's definitely a lot of different ways they can go. I mean, and I really wouldn't be opposed to, like you said, if they wanted to move Acuna for actual higher, frontline starter, I'm kind of all for it because, we had talked before, I know Carson, I mentioned this a bunch of times, but okay, we talk about playoff rotation. Who'd use in the playoff series? The hope is Kodai Senga would be part of the he would just be part of the mix. But then we also talked about Christian Scott as a guy that we had high hopes for. But between his injury and his performance, I wouldn't really put him in a playoff rotation right now. And then even with Severino, he's been good, but he hasn't been lights out, playoff level, game number 2 playoff level caliber. Mania, he's been pretty good. So, I think if you wanted to actually go for it and talk about making a run in the playoffs, I wouldn't mind a frontline starter. It seems like that the Mets don't need that. The rotation's been pretty good, but I feel like if you're looking at the big picture and you actually want to make a true run and look at some of the other rotations you'd be facing in the playoffs, like Philadelphia's, like you're gonna need, I think, a little bit better than a Severino or a Manaea to actually compete with some of these other teams.
Yeah, and I take a lot of heat for that, but I don't see that ace. Everyone says, on sports radio and everybody, oh, go get an ace. Garrett Crochet, barring you trade the haul of prospects you want that the White Sox going to want, you got to pay him right away, which loses the interest of trading for Garrett Crochet because you want him on those cheap RB years and then to pay him. But no, he wants a contract extension right away just for him to maybe pitch in the postseason. So I'm not interested in Garrett Crochet, and you sure as hell don't have anything close to what Baltimore can give the Detroit Tigers for Tariq Skubal. So what ace
Yep.
are you that everyone's like, oh, go get an ace? Like there's just aces free at Walmart everywhere. Like you can get a second baseman at Walmart, you ain't getting an ace at Walmart. So unless you are literally giving the Tigers, which I don't even think they would take, your whole top 10 plus Christian Scott of your prospects, they can just go to Baltimore and be like, I want Jackson Holiday, and he's better than anything, or Kobe Mayo, who's better than anything we have, or Samuel Basello, who's better than anything we have. So, again, everyone's like just pounding the table for an ace. Name one. That's not Garrett Crochet, who now reports are saying probably doesn't get moved at the deadline. So, again, where's this ace? Senga was the ace. That was the only ace you got. Blake's no. Hell no. Hell no.
I mean, yeah, I feel like if the Mets didn't sign Snell in free agency, I don't see them necessarily trading for him. I feel like they avoided him for reasons, so I don't think it's going to be Blake Snell, unless I don't know, would they want to make him like a throw in for Conforto as far as lowering that package, that kind of package deal. I don't know. I mean, Logan Webb is a lot more appealing. He would cost a whole lot more.
A lot more.
But Logan Webb is very appealing.
I mean,
he's
the
definitely
Blue
been one of the better pitchers for a while now in the league.
I mean, the Blue Jays are, again, as they always are, because they're stupid Canadians. They are the wild card, because if they were interested in moving Gosman or Barrios, that's something I'm intrigued in. I know Bass is there too, but I think again I've done that train.
No.
I like.
Again, we right now we're talking about more like top of the
But like again,
and even Gossman has not been his same level that he was.
Exactly. So like
it's like you said, it's not a slam dunk that's like that really stands out. It's like, okay, that's the guy that you really want to make a change to your rotation. This is the guy you should be going after. It just doesn't feel like that's really the case right now. And and you mentioned earlier Blade. That's someone that I would like to see just get some kind of, whether it's him or Sproat or both, give them some kind of major league reps at some point and just try to get a sense if you got something there. That might be your best chance at getting aces, doing it from within, because you look at the Mets playoff rotation we go back to 2015, they didn't make a trade for a big time starter. I mean, it was Syndergaard came up and he was in the rotation. Steven Matz made a start in the World Series. Like, these were just big time prospects that they called up as the season was going on. Yes, those guys were more major league ready and more developed, but still they didn't make a trade. They were lucky that they already had aces in the rotation, no doubt about it, with Harvey and DeGrom. So they had an advantage there. But, I kind of wonder is that, do you like the idea of just kind of trying out Sproat or trying out Blade and seeing if maybe these are a potential big time starter for you instead of making a trade for someone who, like, yes, they have ace potential, but they're not a slam dunk. They're not a guarantee. Like even Barrios, he's been pretty good, but he hasn't been his best self either. And Toronto has just been all around disaster. And that's why they've been in last place.
But again, the term ace, and I think that's an off-season discussion because again, there's a certain guy in Baltimore. Maybe we'll see what happens with Roki Sasaki. So that's again an off-season discussion for aces. But if the Blue Jays decide to do something right for the organization and actually blow this mediocre average team apart and made Jose Barrios available, he's a guy I'm comfortable starting a playoff game. And that's how I'm determining the rest of this year is, do I feel confident with you starting a playoff game? That's the conversation we need to have. I don't care who he's got, a good MLB show card, he's, top 10 in sale. Can I feel confident with you on the mound in October? That's the kind of conversation that I want to have.
Yeah.
And I think we need to have. So if Barrios was available, which I don't think he's going to be, I would feel confident there. Obviously, Logan Webb would be absolutely amazing, but he's not going to be available. Gausman, I do. He has taken a step back, but I still would feel confident with him on the mound in a playoff game.
He's a tough contract to take on. I mean, both of them are. I mean, both these guys. I mean, Barrios signed through 28, so
but Barrios is a hell of a lot cheaper than you would think a middle, especially now. What middle rotation pieces go for? It's Gausman's is big because again he got paid like an ace. But Barrios, I think is where's my note? I would pull it up in a second. But his for
he's 7 years, 131 million
for Gausman. For Gausman,
So. For Barrios, that's
what's left on contract? But what's left on that? 3 years?
Well, he's signed through 28, so he's a free agent in 2029.
Okay.
So,
but again,
still some time. So it'd be a tough one, but I'm curious just to kind of see. I don't know if that's the direction they're going to go. I think they might just stick with what they have, but this is interesting as far as kind of get a couple things done here. You take on Dalton Varsho as your left-handed bat. A guy plays the outfield. He doesn't catch anymore, but he's a guy that he could do a lot of positive things for a team. He's an upgrade over a lot of what the Mets have. So, again, I feel like I would want Toronto to eat at least a little bit of that money. That's a long deal to take. So, if the guy isn't out there, then you don't have to necessarily make the move. That's ultimately what it comes down to. When you're going for these guys that have term, you really got to make sure that they are a long-term fit for you. So, I mean, we'll see. I do think also determining the MRI results of Senga tomorrow is also going to impact this because, he, like you said, he's supposed to be that ace, that guy that is making the game one start that you feel gives you as good a chance as anybody to kind of keep you in the game and kind of not necessarily match the opposing pitcher, but just be competitive and just give you a quality start. And you feel like Senga could do that. But if he's not available, then, is that kind of one of the situations where you say, okay, well, we don't have Senga. It's not our year. We're not going to, overpay because we lost somebody. Or, do they look at the flip side as, no, okay, we're down ace now. We need an ace. That's kind of what it comes down to, and they got to make the decision. I feel like, if we're talking about the wild card series and 3-game set, I do think Severino will be in that mix because he's been good this year. Like I said, the volume kind of worries me a little bit. I feel like, the 5 innings thing, it'd be tough. You'd be really asking a lot of some young players to step up that don't have playoff experience. You'd be counting, I would think, on Budo and Nunez to really kind of carry the load, unless Stanek really puts it together and you have Maton. These guys have been in the playoffs before. So, there's still a lot of scenarios. There's a lot of things that need to play out before they make those decisions. So, they have a little bit of time, but not much, so we'll see what happens. We have to, we have to find out what's going on with McGill tomorrow. What's the status of Senga, and just kind of see where they're at after all of that is said and done. Like I said, are they going to add an outfielder in Conforto? Maybe. I feel like they should regardless. I think that you really just I would not count on Marte. I really wouldn't. I just don't think you can go under that assumption. I feel like if you get him back, that's a bonus. But like I said, even if you get him back, can he stay back? That's ultimately what it comes down to too. And he's going to have to play the outfield, so there's no DHing him to keep his bat in line. That's not an option with JD Martinez here. So there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered as they head into the deadline. But it's definitely a lot of good stuff, though. It's exciting that they are in this position, that they now have the top wild card in the National League. You're like, okay, well, what's next and how do we keep it? And now that we feel like we're going to get a playoff positioning, do we have the pieces to actually make a bit of a playoff run? Because like we said, the offense it's as good as it's been in a long time, so we feel like we have that under control. But now it's a matter of getting the pitching to match that and just keeping you in the games. And then that's ultimately what really matters in October, as we saw. I mean, pitching is key. So that's the one thing that they still have to just kind of make a decision on, because as they continue to trot Ottavino out there, as they continue to trot Diekman out there, and Eric Orzi and some of these other guys, you're like, oh my gosh! Like, could you imagine Jake Diekman or Ottavino coming into a playoff game? Like, that's I don't know. I mean, to me, that's like a pretty scary proposition. So I feel like they do need to kind of do something else there.
And now Heyman, I don't know if we saw again. I just saw the Heyman tweet about 5 teams of interest in Snell. That's a very and it has to be the big market teams, because again, it's a $30 million, $25 million, $30 million 2025 player option, and most likely he's going to say, "I'll take $30 million next year." So, it's interesting. Again, like you said, we'll see the injury update tomorrow. The MRI is going to change a lot. If it comes back, hey, he's only going to be out a month, you don't have to maybe go that big term for a pitcher. But again, if this is he's gone the rest of the year, which is possible, and obviously, knock on wood, it's not that. Again, do you go and if the Rangers aren't selling, the pitching market, Eflin's gone, Savali's gone, like the starting pitching market is thin. Like there's not a lot. Again, Eric Fetty becomes that new big sexy name, and I think you might get a bidding war for him. So again, it's a very interesting decision for David Stearns. He throws with his right hand. I mean, he's not amazing, but
Yeah.
it's an option. I mean, it's not sexy.
A lot of, but Jameson Taillon is a guy that a lot of teams are looking at as well. So pretty much, when it comes down to pitching, like every contender always wants more pitching. Like, so
Yeah.
that's kind of like you said, where they're in a tough spot is like, okay, you have these other organizations that have the big pieces that they could get someone much easier than you could. So you're going to be battling out with a lot of teams. I mean, that's what we've seen. Like, other than Randy, all the guys that have been moved, it's been a lot of pitchers so far, whether it's been starters or relievers. That's kind of what teams are always going for in every trade deadline, not just this year, but that's something that always happens, whether it's rotation or bullpen or both.
I mean, I think we have to stop saying that. They can outbid a lot of teams if they wanted to. There's only a few in this farm system wise I would take the Mets or teams that I can outbid the Mets. It's just a point of, are they going to be willing to do it? They can do it. And especially Stearns continues to bring his own guys. He has the depth and there's quality. Yes, the injuries have kind of killed the vibe of the Mets farm system, but they're in the upper half of baseball. Like I saw anything from like 12 to 10. Like I don't think they're an elite farm system. There's depth, there's options. Like if Steve Cohen tomorrow morning wakes up and says, I want Garrett Crochet, he can offer, and Baltimore would be better, confidently. Everyone says the Dodgers offer so much great. The Dodgers farm system is flawed now. It's not. Everyone has just been default. The Dodgers farm system is amazing. If you actually look at the Dodgers farm lately, it's solid. There's pieces. Dan Cartaya has been asked. Like you have Dalton Rushing, you have a couple of pitchers, but a lot of similar type, middle infield pesky guys like the Mets have. Like Baltimore obviously is up top, but I think if the Mets want somebody, and if David Stearns wants somebody, he has that ability. It's just, again, is that guy available now? That's the question. I'm tired of hearing this. Well, our farm system is like the Royals. It's not. If David Stearns wants a guy, he can go pay the price and you're not selling everything like a Kansas City Royals would be, or held right now the San Diego Padres if they were to finish off their farm system. So I'm just tired. I know you are not specifically. A lot of people have been saying that, and I'm just kind of tired of that. If Stearns he has that firepower and the ammunition. If he wants a guy, he can get him. Again, it's the same problem. That guy is not available.
Oh, well, I mean, we have good news. Jacob Young just cleared the bases in the extra innings against the Cardinals, so that's good news for the Mets. So That's interesting. Anytime the other there's just so many teams in the mix that no matter what, someone's gaining ground, someone's losing ground. So, but I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, I don't know if a random name is gonna come up or just all of a sudden become available. Right now I don't see it. We could be surprised, but I don't like I said, I don't see a slam dunk name. So I can see them kind of waiting it out. And I just from what you see with Stearns, at least with Milwaukee, like he's not gonna make any just totally irrational things. Like he's going to be smart with it and just kind of get the guys that do fit, correct value, everything like that. And in my opinion, I think we could put the whole sell and buy thing conversation to bed. I think with all these injuries we're seeing to rotation now, you just can't afford to give up anything. I found the trade that the Phillies and the Orioles did was so fascinating that like both of them gave up major league talent each way, one on the pitching side, one on the hitting side, but they could afford to do that because they're both in first place and just have so many options, especially the Orioles when it comes to offense. Like they just have so many guys that they could use that they were able to part with somebody like Austin Hayes to then get Sir Anthony Dominguez. So the Mets, I don't think they're in, not that Dominguez is amazing, but they're not in that position to, at least in my opinion, to do that buy and sell thing. I feel like that's kind of over after you've had 2 injuries now. And like I said, I still have concerns with Severino and some of these other guys that have injury histories that have held up so far. I wouldn't be trying to lose any arms. If anything, I'm trying to gain arms. I want as many arms as possible. Yeah, I gotta be prepared because we've seen it before. Obviously, the infamous trade deadline when DeGrom got hurt right as the trade deadline was happening, and then they were hoping that we're gonna get DeGrom back and we're gonna make a run for it. And that very day of the trade deadline, there was a DeGrom injury, and they did not make a move for extra pitching. So I just feel like now is your chance right before the deadline to just kind of cover up everything and be prepared for the different possibilities. But we'll see. Just kind of like we said, they're going for it, but what does that mean? How far do they go?
Yeah. So again, and they definitely I think that plan of buy and sell again. They've put and the better part of that kind of was to the point of if he came out of the break, split with the Yankees, not dominate the Braves, and I think that would have been if you were just an average team. Now you have dominated. So again, you have to buy. You can't subtract. You can subtract minor league wise, but you cannot unless again, like it's a Austin Hayes or Anthony Dominguez type trade where it's like, okay, I have a surplus of outfielders in Baltimore's case. Okay, I need a high leverage arm. The Phillies, I don't think they don't have a surplus of yes they've had a bunch of guys have really good years in that pen, but lately they haven't been good. But Dominguez and then hell the Orioles do get an outfielder back and Christian and I get traded every year Pache. So I don't think there's that type of trade out there because I don't think the Mets have we got a surplus of little people. I think that's possible in a trade, but again, most of them are injured or having like a 67 OPS plus. But again, just I hope and I think if going forward is not just adding on the margins, I do think there could be a bigger move. I just again, knowing Stearns, let that just be a kind of last second out of nowhere. We didn't think that guy was available and he could pull that again. Adamas for Rasmussen and what's it called? Like he's done these type. Josh Hader getting traded for out of absolutely nowhere. So he's done this in the past. Don't be surprised if you see some random. Well, I didn't see that coming type trades.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, would that mean Alonso? I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. I mean, we'll get to Pete obviously all off season, but I think you have to, in my opinion, you have to operate on. I think under the assumption that you don't have Pete. I think with what's happened with Scott Boras these past few years, these guys run into the next season. So like the Alonso thing is going to be a 2025 thing where we're talking about as we're heading into spring training. You saw these guys sign late with Boris. You saw, Bellinger, you saw Snell, you saw a bunch of guys. They signed super, super late. And it's hard to operate an off season when you have this thing lingering over your head the entire time as far as, okay, what are we going to do with Pete? And you can't let that prevent you from all the other moves that you want to make. And now at the last minute, Pete decides to take your offer, but you already let all the other options pass by you. So I think you have to kind of look at it as, I hope we could keep Pete, but you can't guarantee that. So I don't know if they would be willing to do that with how well the offense has been. Again, I don't see a instant call up where they could just kind of plug that in and still get production and still upgrade the team. They don't have that surplus to do that. But I think as they are moving forward, I just feel like that's something they have to think about. I really just I can't guarantee he's going to be back with Boris, and I don't know. It's just a very interesting timeline that they're at right now in this window where we didn't know that the team was all of a sudden going to get this hot and have it sustained for this long, to the point where fans are excited. Like, we finally had really nice attendance today in Citi Field. That was very good to see. It hadn't been the case all year. So now that the fans are in it, the team has to be in it as well. So that's where it really comes down to them as far as what they do, how far, again, just kind of how far they go. And I'm fascinated. This is really our first time seeing Stearns do it in a Mets regime, as now that it's, like we say, the big market and things like that. You have Steve Cohen backing you, and he's tweeting just about after every win. So Steve Cohen's really invested right now. He's been watching. So there's a lot of good stuff that's been happening right now. And again, hopefully, fingers crossed that Senga's okay, and that's not a long-term thing. But they have a lot of pieces that like we said, with Nunez and guys that we didn't really expect. Budo to just become very, very big pieces of the team. And who knows, maybe there are other internal options that end up do play a little more. If I'm trying to trade Beatty, I would think, at least in my opinion, I would have tried to have him get a little more major league reps, just see if I could get that trade value up a little more, instead of continually trotting out DJ Stewart and Ben Gamel, knowing that there's no upside. I don't know. I feel like I would at least try to just see if I just try something.
I differ with you there in the Beatty sense because, again, you want to play this game of playing Beatty in the big leagues, and if he continues to look how he did, like, that's just, you're lowering the value. Let him go be Barry Bonds in AAA because, again, let the Marlins, who are dumber than a box of rocks, if we could potentially swindle a Max Meyer, Tanner Scott duo with a bundle centered around Brett Beatty, it fills a lot of needs for this year. And in Meyer's case, having an actual good depth starter, so you don't have to continue to try out David Peterson and Tyler McGill as, hey, there's our young, cheap pitching depth.
And those guys' contracts are coming up too, so they're not going to have Peterson and McGill forever.
So again, for me, Beatty, move them if you think there's a bundle out there. I had Carson Strolling about Beatty for Conforto. Maybe there's something there because obviously the Giants don't have it there. I have Matt Chapman, but maybe they flip Matt Chapman. Who knows? Again, so there's plenty of ideas, but I don't think Beatty's getting traded for like a strictly reliever. I think if it's a bundle, like, again, we were rumored to in the offseason, where it was that starting pitcher for Beatty. I think especially when we're just strictly talking about the Miami, because we've had those rumors. Yes, it's a different regime, but I still think there's probably people in the building who probably still have that same opinion less than a year ago. So you still think there's that opinion out there. So if there's a bundle situation with Miami and Beatty being a big piece of that, I think that's on the table. It's been, Martino put it out. But I don't think, like you hinted at earlier, I don't think Beatty's getting traded just strictly for a reliever. But I think if, something bigger, I think that's when you see Beatty's name out there and him maybe being that big piece for, hey, maybe it's Brent Rooker. Who knows? It could be anybody. Again, it could be, again, out of this we're not expecting type bigger move. I think that's where you see Beatty.
Yes. Something like that would be interesting because, actually, like we said, train for a guy that has term and somebody like Rooker, where it's like, okay, now we solved the outfield thing, and now our lineup is really strong. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I just feel like if they're talking about the Giants with Conforto and looking for a slight upgrade in the outfield, to go from that to go to Brent Rooker, that's like a totally different conversation that you'd be having with a team.
we're having a different conversation a week ago. If you finish this sweep of the Braves off, and you're going to play who's after the
The
Braves?
Twins.
The Twins. Let's say you win the first game of that series against the Twins. You've won like what, 8 in a row? Like, I think that
Yeah,
changes the
almost.
I think that would
Yeah.
change the conversation again. Like we're changing the conversation now. If they go into the break not losing a game or the break the deadline, maybe Stearns does get again, like we keep seeing bigger picture. I'm not saying I just saying throw Rooker out there because we know he's available.
Mhm.
If they don't lose going into the trade deadline, maybe that changes the thing again, and we're like, you know what? Like, I don't know Carson's trolling, but maybe they push 3/4 of all their chips in and say, you know what? Let's go big and let's try to go home because again, Alonso's not guaranteed to be here next year. Severino's not guaranteed. JD Martinez isn't going to be there. This could be a completely different team next year. So
Yeah,
if you
and
in the map and you got some magic going with this, Grimace and the army general with the great name, the rally pimp, the oh my god, like the Latin rapper, like a lot of magic is built in here. You don't get those opportunities often. If you think you can do it, you kind of have to go for it.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, make sure you get those in before we depart. I'm just gonna say one more thing as far as future of the team. I think that sweeping the Yankees and Juan Soto hitting home run and staring down Francisco Alvarez, and then for the Mets just to go put up 10 more runs on them and beat them 12-3. That that has to help if you are trying to recruit Juan Soto. And the Yankees, they had a ugly loss to Boston tonight. The bullpen blew at Clay Holmes and Luke Weaver and all those guys. I like you said, it could be a really, really different team. So I feel better about the Mets' chances to get Soto than I did before. I feel like what he's been saying in his post games and just kind of looking at the other side, he's putting together a phenomenal season. Meanwhile, the Mets, just a sleepy Mets team coming from Miami, just come in and kill them. And Garrett Cole and 300 million, 325 million, all that. That looks good for the Mets. And and you have to think that Cohen just loves Juan Soto and would really love to have him. So I'm just gonna kind of close on that. I just want to kind of, since I wasn't there for the Yankees stream, that was just my takeaway, was that it was just a very nice recruiting piece when Soto played great and the Mets just still destroyed the Yankees again. So I just found that was very fascinating, just seeing the disparity and the depth. And yes, I know Stanton's hurt and the Yankees have injuries, but the Mets, they have guys out there too, and everyone does right now. That's just the kind of the sport. We see with Atlanta right now: Albies down, Acuna down, Spencer Strider down, Michael Harris down, Max Fried. Like, it happens to everybody. So that's where they're at. Would you take on the Giants closer to give back less prospects? Yeah, I mean, so which Rogers are you looking at? Like, are we talking about Doval? I mean,
That's not adding. That's not lessening profit. That's adding
yeah.
profit. We're trying to get Emilio Doval. Rogers, again, like I said, he's got $12 million guaranteed next year. So he's a hefty prospect. He's making 12 this year, and he's got $12 million guaranteed next year. So that you add that,
Yeah.
I think that definitely lowers the prospect capital. But if we're talking Camilo Doval, I mean, you're not lowering prospect capital; you're adding prospect capital, and if that's who you were referring to. But if Taylor Rogers makes money, I don't think Tyler makes anything. I think he's still on
Yeah, I don't think his
free arb.
contract is too crazy. I'm looking at Taylor now. He's a free agent 26. He signed a 3-year, $33 million, which is pretty
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
I mean, that's standard reliever value. 2.27 ERA. He's left-handed. He's better than Diekman, so that'd be interesting. And I'm curious to kind of see what happens with Alex Young. I don't know if there's anything there. Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. He's been good so far, but we've seen that happen with plenty of guys. I had a note here. Again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. I was actually looking at Jorge Lopez and just kind of seeing the difference as far as the way the Mets utilize him compared to the Cubs. And when it came to his game log, the Mets used Lopez on back-to-back days quite a few times. He hasn't done that once with the Cubs, and he's been very good for Chicago. I mean, right now, I was looking at it. I believe the ERA for the Cubs, it was like 0 point something or whatever. Like, he's been really good, but the Mets, it's been such a struggle with the rotation going deep and not be able to trust a lot of relievers, that the guys who do well, they end up overworking and losing their effectiveness. I mean, we saw it with Reed Garrett. I mean, they just absolutely broke that man with how much he was overworked. So I wonder if, you see Alex Young come into the mix and he's looking pretty good, if hopefully they don't kind of use that and like, oh, we found a good guy, let's just keep using him over and over, and we don't have to use Diekman and we don't have to use Ottavino, and then we end up making Alex Young not as effective or injured. They've gotten better with that because of the guy stepping up now that they do have Budo, who's been really good for them. Unfortunately, he's got hurt, but Maton, he's really kicked it into gear. I mean, he's looking really, really solid. They used him in the 10th inning yesterday in a tie game. So they've had guys stepping up to the point where they aren't doing that as much. So that's just something that I am curious about. And then that always and that's something they have to consider if they are bringing in other arms. It's like, okay, well, if a certain team is using them one way, having them pitch every 2 days, every 3 days, and now our expectation is, okay, we need you to go 3 days often, or go, like back-to-back days a lot of times. Like, that's something that it would just kind of be different for a lot of these guys. So it's a lot of things to consider. So when we're looking at Tyler Rogers, right now he's still under ARB control. So right now he's 1 year, $3.25 million. He's a free agent in 2026. He's having a solid year too. He would be a really different look for this bullpen with that arm slot. He's been just really good with the control, which I love, because we've seen the walk problem with so many guys on this staff. Getting a guy who come in here just to give a totally different look and doesn't walk the ballpark would be an awesome fit. So, that would be, I'd be okay with that. If you're trading Beatty and you're able to kind of solve two things at once, whether you're getting Conforto and one of the Rogers, that definitely would be a move that is able to solve multiple things all in one acquisition. So it's something that I definitely am in favor for, if I am also getting one of those pitching pieces from San Francisco too.
Well, and also you can't live with a world that Michael Conforto hits more career homers as the Mets than Carlos Beltran. So you don't
that
want
would
you don't
stink.
want.
Yeah, I really thought I had that one in the bag and it was over. But who knows? He might be coming. He could be coming back, and I don't know.
So-
Part of me kind of feels like it's going to happen. That's just
I hope it
my
does.
feeling. I feel like it's going to happen.
I mean, like I said, Lindor got one of his buddies guaranteed, almost got a second buddy. Pete Alonso has his gerbil. Let Brandon have his buddy back. Like, please. Like, look, he's been the one petitioning for them to buy. It would be so funny if Nemo's in the office, like, with the gun. Give me Michael Conforto and give me my best friend back. I don't care what it costs. It's not going to cost you PCA and, getting Trevor Williams. Like, it's not going to cost you anything. Go get my buddy. I'm been the petitioning to buy in the, on every media source. Make me happy. You paid me. I am now the captain. I'm the captain now. So, again, am I biased because he's my second favorite Met and those are my guys? Of course. Do I want him to hit more than Beltran? No, but I kind of want to see him make that tweet.
But I mean, that might be a good sign if he does. That might mean that things worked out really well if he's playing good. So, I mean, we'll see. And he's a guy that he is on the expiring year of the deal, so it really shouldn't cost much. They're just. I don't know. To see Michael Conforto with an OBP under 300, even when he was struggling, he would still draw his walks and things like that. So he just hasn't been great, honestly.
Isn't somebody wearing 30 right now too?
I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
I know. Obviously, we knew Robertson wore it last year.
Yeah, I don't think anyone currently has it, but I could double check because I know
Watch
Deacon's 30. No, Adcock is 52, so it's not
52.
him.
Okay.
No, Deakman's got 30, of course.
Oh yeah, he'll be gone. He'll be gone by then. He'll get his number back. I mean, again, this would be funny as so. I would like to see him take his Binghamton number back, but he would have to, give Tyrone Taylor. He'd have to give Tyrone Taylor up to get 15 back.
So a new team is in the Tanner Scott sweepstakes as the Royals are showing interest in Tanner Scott. So
they need a closer. Goddamn Clark MacArthur or whatever the hell his name is. Awful. That's a hockey. That's not even right. That's a hockey player for the Senators. MacArthur's his name. He blew the game the other day against the Diamondbacks. But yeah, not surprising. They need as many bullpen arms as they possibly can out in KC. So not surprising, but again.
Are you a Carlos Estevez fan? How do you feel about him? He's a name that I've seen pop up multiple times as far as the Mets
He's
potentially being
intriguing.
linked to him.
He's intriguing, and obviously he was on the nerds list. So again, he's got good baseball on page. But again, those hard has closer experience. Again, it's kind of everything I want. It's that kind of marquee. I don't even think he'd be marquee, but for what the role
He's
he
an
needs,
all-star.
he is an all-star. He did get a shitty MLB The Show card. No, he didn't. Tyler Anderson got it, or whatever. Tyler Anderson got it. But again, Estevez is a really solid arm. I'll take him. But again, what's the price to acquire? If the Yimi Garcia, which he's having a similar year to Yimi, that's Jonathan at the top 10 prospect that went the other way. So is that Kevin Parada? Is that I don't think it'd be Tidwell? Is it Alex Ramirez? Again, that's the kind of conversation if with the Yimi Garcia setting the market and with Class A being not an amazing prospect, but he's a solid. Again, he's a solid player. Again, he's not going to be a generational talent, but he's got tools. Pipeline system at 10. So again, I would take Estevez in a heartbeat. But he needs big
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I have concerns about him. I think his second half struggles last year following his All-Star selection is concerning to me. His fly ball rate is really concerning to me. So, I could see a scenario where he does regress and his numbers don't look as pretty. So he's not really at the top of the list. I wouldn't be giving up a whole lot to get him, but he is someone that could help. I'm not going to deny that. He definitely is better than Eric Orzi and a whole lot of options. We've seen Ty Adcock and plenty of guys that are still on this 40-man roster. So, that's ultimately what it comes down to. As we've seen, we have a few relievers out right now with injuries. So you have to kind of always be, like I said, prepared for that. And that's what this trade deadline is all about, being prepared for all those different things. So, we'll see what happens. I do hope that everybody does get fully healthy just to see what this team really can do. Like, I really do hope that we get to just see what happens if you have Nunez and Garrett and SRF and Marte and Senga and Christian Scott. And it's like, we haven't seen it yet. Like, we have not seen this team with all of their guys together play for any really extended period of time. So that's kind of what makes it really tough to evaluate as far as going forward post-trade deadline, as far as what you want to do with the team, because you don't know, because you haven't really seen it all come together. And despite all those injuries, like we said, they're in a really good position right now. They're still playing really good baseball. It wasn't just June. They've kept on rolling. So that's just been very encouraging to see. And hopefully they keep it going, because, like I said, this race still is very tight. There still is just a lot of teams in there. Even Pittsburgh, they've been playing really well. They're above 500. Don't sleep on Arizona. They could make a run again out of the wild card. So, and San Diego still has talent. They're still going to be trying. Like, we've talked about them so much. They've given up so much to be competitive that, like, they're not going to be stopping now. You know what I mean? So, you're going to have the teams that are right behind you also being aggressive. So, to kind of stay ahead, you got to be aggressive too, I would think.
Yeah, again, and we'll see, what happens. But again, there's plenty of options. Again, a lot of stuff has come off the board, but again, there's still plenty of names out there, and we'll see what happens. Again, we have 4 days down to the deadline. Yeah, 4 days, because today's Friday. I don't even know what day of the week it is.
Yep, today is Friday. It will
Working
be Saturday in 18 minutes on the East Coast.
Yeah, imagine, this old dinosaur up at 12 o'clock. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
no, I
I'm
mean,
surprised he hasn't fallen asleep yet.
I'm trying my best. I'm really trying to hang in there. I took vacation. I was out of yesterday's stream, and then right after vacation, boom, I'm just kind of thrown right in. So it's all worth it, though. We thank all you guys for watching. If you haven't already, definitely make sure to check out Carson's video that he made, where he reviewed all of the selections that the Mets made, and I give him a ton of credit. Those are very tough videos to make, because there's a lot that goes into it, doing the research on all these guys, because they made, like it says here, 20 selections. So it's not the easiest information to come across. It's not always readily available. You do have to do a lot of research to kind of pull it together, and he works really hard on that. So make sure to show that video some love. Obviously, subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel. You can see on our TikTok post, like a lot of my Mets Frankly post games. Carson's been filling in for me this week while I was away, so I appreciate that. So definitely make sure you guys are tuned in. We're going to have our streams, as you know, after every series, and then the episodes are available on audio the next day. Andrew, do you have anything else before we depart? Any other like last minute trades you got in your notebook? Anything else that's been popping up in the brain? Some out of left field stuff that usually ends up happening because you're always really good with those.
Yeah, we'll save that and we'll plug. I mean, you plugged a lot, but there's still one more. Again, I'll wait for Carson to reveal the details. But again, we will be live. Some of us will be live, obviously here for the trade deadline. We're gonna have a lot of guests. I'll let Carson.
That's going to be a big show, guys. That we're going to have a full panel, a lot of guests, a lot of boxes. So we're going to have a lot of friends that you've seen, a lot of our special guests throughout the season. They're going to be joining us. I'll be there too. So that's going to be a big one. You guys do not want to miss out on this very channel on Tuesday as we're doing it live. So we're going to be reacting to all the craziness that's going to happen on the trade deadline.
I am trying and working my way to try to get on that show for longer than a half hour by lunch break. I'm trying to figure out being there. But yeah, a lot of special guests. I'll probably pull out, again, maybe we'll make it like NBA.com or ESPN does. When there's a trade, we'll have like a trade alert video or sound we'll bring up. Make Carson work harder because, he loves to work hard. But again, a lot more to come.
He can make it to the deadline.
We'll see if he has a voice at all. We'll see if he's not dead by then. So again, check out his draft video. Check out last podcast. We went over some trade deadline wish list guys we talked about on the last pod. So again, follow us on Twitter, follow us on TikTok, all these Spotify and all these other podcast networks. Even
all your listening platforms.
Yeah, because we can't just have like 2. We gotta have like 76, and Carson's got us all up on them. So again, we're everywhere. You can probably find us in the yellow book at this point. So thank you guys for watching. Frank, if you want to give that outro, you can give the outro yourself.
Yes, we are going to play it again. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll be back once the Mets series with the Braves is over on Sunday. We usually do our streams Sundays and Thursdays. So make sure to tune in after this Braves series is over. If any other big moves happen, like obviously if the Mets get Conforto tomorrow or something, we'll try to make something happen there as well. So until the next one, thank you all for watching, and let's go Mets.